All right, so tell me your name, when and where you were born.
Jonell Rhodes, Rhodes, born January 24th, 1961, in Lutcher, Louisiana.
Okay. So, tell me about growing up, early years. What do you remember?
Early years. How early?
You can remember.
Let's see. So, I guess the earliest that I can remember, I do have some memories, toddlerhood. For some reason, and I guess I don't know if these are my memories or because it was talked about so much, but my great grandmother, Gam, I remember like pictures in my head, different things with that. I remember talking about a Singer sewing machine, and that I would go and sit on the pedal, and I remember I can vividly see the pedal. And if I recall, I think they said that I sat there till when she passed, I didn't go do it anymore. Other than that, the next earliest, all elementary school. I remember all of elementary
school life.
Huh?
We'll get into school life a little later.
Okay. I remember when we had the old house. This was before Betsy, which was in 65. I remember we had the old house and on Clue Street, and Boo was watching us. And I don't have a memory of it, but I do have the scar. They said I jumped out of the window to the backyard area. Right. They said there was like a little elevated room to the back, and apparently I was playing in the window and just kind of decided to leap out the window. So I have a scar on my back from where I got scratched from the window. Yeah, it's kind of sad when there's and you jumped out the window, but so I remember. I don't remember the incident, but like I said, I do have the scar, and I know the story behind that. I do remember that was a wooden house. Clue Street now is a brick house. I remember Betsy, because I remember putting my feet. Kevin and I had twin beds in one room, and I remember putting my feet to the floor. I don't know if the weather woke me up or what woke me up, and I remember saying, "Mommy, there's water on the floor." And that's how they got us out. They got us out of the house through the window into Miss Maud's window that's on the side of the house, out of the water. We lost everything, Betsy. We lost the house. The car floated away. The house was just completely demolished. I remember staying by Miss Maud till daylight. I remember sitting on her porch, and the water was up the steps, but not as high up as we were. And they said we couldn't touch the water because there were snakes in the water and rats in the water. I remember seeing it was just all flooded. And I don't know how we got there. I'm sure we didn't walk, so I guess a boat got us there. But I remember us going to the school, was it Palmer School?
Further up.
That's further up. Towards St. Claude. Yes. Yeah. So we went to Palmer School, and I remember being there in the shelter because a lot of people, Miss Maud and her daughters, her daughter's children, they just gave us shelter, to get out of the flood. So we went to the shelter, to the school for shelter, and then I remember Uncle Stanley brought us to Mama's house in a boat. And that's where we stayed on Law. I remember being on Law Street. I had no idea how long we were on Law Street because they built a brand new house. So I'm assuming we were probably there for quite a while, unless they gave us some kind of housing, disaster housing or something. I have no recollection of that. I don't know. But I remember having the new house, and we had the newest house, and I remember during our childhood, the neighborhood children all thought we were rich because our house was like brand new, and it had all of the latest things in it. So, of course we weren't rich. I mean, I'm sure parents had probably made an SBA loan like everybody else and rebuilt the house. So I remember that. I remember Law Street. A lot of my childhood, most of my childhood memories are Law Street. My friends were all in the 7th Ward. I grew up, my parents lived in the 9th Ward, but I grew up a 7th Ward girl. Went to school in the 7th Ward. I remember the milkman, Mr. Peter. I actually remember his name. I could see his face. I remember hearing the clanging of the milk bottles in the metal case when he came to the side door on Law Street by the steps, and he would tap on the door, and it was this big fan in the kitchen, and you could hear the fan going, and Mama was up. I don't know, Papa may have already been going to work by then, and it was very early. It was always very early in the morning. But I remember I used to listen for Mr. Peter to come and bring the...
All right, so tell me about your grandparents.
Just to hear that click. Name?
Names.
Okay.
Yes.
So my grandfather was Moses William Brown, and my grandmother was Aurelia Jollier Brown. So my grandfather, but my grandfather was a very wise man. Funny. He was funny. I always had jokes, lots of jokes. So, but he had a nightly routine that he did. At night we would be in bed, but he would do his reading, do some reading. Then he would play the big band music on, I forgot, WNO or RO station on AM, and he would listen to the big band music at night. And then he would, when he was finished with that, he would do his Bible reading. He turned off the radio, he would do his Bible reading. And then after that, he would get on his knees by the chair. And we would, if he got up, like to go to the bathroom or something like that, you would see him, around the time you would see him on his knees. The house was quiet when he did his prayer time. You wouldn't hear him praying out loud, but he would be on his knees at his chair where he always sat. Matter of fact, the video that we have of him is, I think is in that chair. It just was in a different spot at that time. But he would sit, he would kneel at that chair every night and would say his prayers. And I remember that as long as I can remember that he was, mobile and getting around. So my grandfather liked things done, certainly. So, and if you didn't do it right after a few times, he would tell you just don't do it. So there were things, especially the ice cube tree, sweeping. There were things that Lord forgive us, we would do incorrectly.
Intentionally.
Yeah, my grandfather would have to come back and do it, and he'd tell you just don't do it. Because apparently he was incompetent. He wouldn't tell you that, but he was I'm sure those were his thoughts.
So you told me a story before about him always bringing home groceries.
Right. He would, yeah. My grandfather would, lots of memories about him coming home from Schwegman. Everything was in brown paper bags at that time. And he was always coming home with like a whole lot of groceries. And it may have been once a month, but in my mind, when I look back at it, it looked like it was all the time. You know, and they fed all of us. Mm-hmm. You know, we were all over there together for Sunday dinner. You know, so yeah, like I said, I don't know what the arrangement was. If everybody pitched in, or he just fed all of us. But it was lots and lots of grocery bags, like about this tall. Like, they were full grocery bags coming in, and we would all help put the groceries away. But yeah, and I guess because of my grandmother's health, it was him that would do the grocery shopping. So, but I'm sure my grandmother dictated her list.
Let's talk about her. Let's talk about your grandmother.
Okay. So my grandmother really was Charlie Brown. I have not yet in my life met a human being that is as loving and kind as my grandmother was. I mean, just sincerely, the person that she was. And I remember coming to the conclusion that my grandmother was an angel. She really was not a human being. And God gave her to us so that my mom and them could get here. And that we would all have her as a grandmother. And we were just like blessed. We must have been special people. It's the sincerity and the love of my grandmother is I'm 60. I've yet to meet somebody sincerely loving as my grandmother was. There were people that we wanted her to be mean to. She just wasn't mean. You know, I remember my grandmother was in this, they used to call them sewing clubs, but I didn't see any sewing. I don't know if they ever did any sewing, but that's what they call them. But garden clubs and stuff like that. But usually ladies, you know, from the church and stuff, and they would get together, so they would have their meetings once a month at each other's homes. And when it came around time for my grandmother's turn to have the meeting, well, everything had to be spotless. So the floors got buffed and shined because it was hardwood floors. And so we would be, you know, on our knees and then sliding back. I mean, because the floors had to be shining and everything had to be clean. Everything got dusted and just sparkling clean. And she would cook. Oh my goodness, they would just be cooking all day. Everything was filled with like stuffed red fish. It was just real fancy stuff, right? Pretty dishes, you know, come out, everything, the pretty tablecloths and stuff, and everything would come out. And we just thought that these was just the meanest little old biddies, and why did our grandmother work so hard for them to come? And I'm sure this happened at their houses too, when it was time for the ladies to come over for the meeting, because they all wanted to impress each other. But yeah, so I remember we would do that. And when I was about 11 or 12, there was a store on Canal Street called Sutton's. And Sutton's was like a really fancy store. They used to sell really pretty lace handkerchiefs and things like that, and things that you would lay out on your dresser, type of lace, really fancy lace tablecloths and stuff. And I would catch the bus to go to Werlines for my piano lessons. I would stop at Sutton's, and if my grandmother the reason why I knew about Sutton's is because my grandmother would go there to get someone's birthday or something, one of the ladies like from the club or somebody, you know, special at church or whatever, or in the neighborhood. She would get them a really, really pretty, fancy handkerchief that may have had the initials on it or something like that. And they were beautiful. They would come in a box, and it was just so pretty. And so I would do that. And I would get handkerchiefs for my grandmother. and she would let me. They taught me how to starch them and fold them, and but it was always so pretty. That's how I got introduced to that. But she loved things like that. She loved to help me and give gifts like that. She didn't. My grandmother couldn't by the time we had come along, but she had several strokes. So she didn't have her speech wasn't really good, and so you had to, a lot of times she had to say things, or sometimes she would get frustrated with us because she had to repeat it so many times, or we would try to help each other to understand what she was saying. But I remember Terry and Shavonda were over here last night. I remember telling them, we were talking about what they'll tell you, to be home when the lights went out. And I remember us outside playing. And you kind of knew to come closer home, you know, because it was getting towards dusk. And I remember my grandmother coming out to the porch, and she couldn't yell out for us, so she would clap. And I remember hearing her clap and knew it was time to come inside. You know, so it was like we were that sensitive, you know, to her and what we needed to do. But she was she loved us like nothing we ever.
So I hear you saying us. So explain that dynamic of like your sibling and your cousins.
Well, yeah. So my sibling, the New Orleans crew of the siblings and the cousins. I was the only girl. There was Eric, who was Boo's son, Kevin, my mama, my brother, and there was Wayne and Brian, who was Nanny's boys, and Stanley and Jeffrey. So there were no girls. I was it, except for the time when my grandparents had Debbie Ann for that period of time. But other than that, I was the only girl. So I played football in the street. I was always the quarterback. I knew how to put my hand. They taught me how to put my hand by the string. I knew how to very well. I knew how to throw a football. They would get mad and push on anybody that pushed me too hard, because of course it was touch, because we were playing in the street. So you got pushed if you pushed me too hard. You're supposed to just tap, because we playing touch. I will be the only girl in the street with the boys from the neighborhood playing football. But I still was very girly. So I had all of my girly stuff, my dolls and paper dolls and hair, straightening the curls, the ribbon and everything else. But I could play football. So a lot of friends. Like I said, I grew up. My parents were in the night world, but I grew up a 7-boy girl. Because all of my school friends, everybody, because you went to school where you lived. So that's where all of my friends were, you know, around by my grandparents' house. So that's where that's where I'm at.
Let's talk about your parents.
Okay. So my mom was a nurse. Rosanna Brown Williams. Mom was a nurse. My daddy, Joseph Monroe Williams Jr., was a twine mill worker. And my daddy worked out by the docks where the longshoremen are along the river. That's where the plant was, the twine mill plant was. And my mom and dad, by the time we came along, my mom worked at another hospital. We worked at a couple of hospitals before we came along. But by the time Kevin and I had come along, my mom and my dad worked literally 5 minutes from each other. So they would go, when my mom was doing the day shift, which was most of the time when we were, what I can remember throughout childhood, childhood being like elementary years, she worked the day shift. And so during that time, we would stay at my grandparents' house, because there was nobody to get us back and forth to school. It was the 60s, so, integration was still going on. Segregation was still going on. Integration was starting. Segregation was very much still alive. So we went to school in the 7th Ward, and we would stay at my grandparents during the week. But my parents would come when they got off from work. So kind of overseeing, what needed to be done, for us. Brian and Wayne lived on Law Street for a while, so Nanny was there. So Nanny was a teacher at the elementary school. But my parents lived in the 9th Ward, and my grandparents were in the 7th Ward. So when we would go home, our parents in the 9th Ward. So we had, I'm trying to think, well, at that time we didn't have our own rooms, but we had twin beds in the room, and new house. Like I said, we lost the house in Betsy, so it was pretty much a new house. I remember parties. They would have, my mom and them would have parties. Not crazy parties, but all parties were like family. It was family parties. So it would be a Saturday, gathering, and they would, a whole lot of cooking, and people bringing food or whatever, and, just kind of hanging out. And that's when I would see the cousins on my dad's side for things like that. And that was everybody's house. Uncle Stanley's house was a lot like that, the parties, the family parties. We would go to church. The church that we went to with my parents was a split from St. John Divine, which is like the family church. And so it was Genesis Missionary Baptist Church. Their service was for 7:30 in the morning. Service actually started at 7:30 in the morning. So we get up, you get dressed, you get very dressed. You're very dressed up for church. Kevin would strip. Kevin, when we would get to church, he would take his clothes off. When we got to church, he took off the tie. He would work on the buttons, and he would strip. My dad was in the choir, and I remember my mom would be sitting with us. I think my mom was an usher at the time. I don't remember. I remember us being to the back all the time. We could have been to the back because Kevin was so bad. He was taking his clothes off. But I think my mom was an usher. I think that's why we sat to the back. And my daddy was the baritone, very beautiful voice. My dad had a beautiful voice, and so he would be there singing, and it was always a regal thing. The choirs would go up. All choirs had robes, and so we would do the service at 7:30, and service was over about 9:30. And we would go to Sunday school. So Sunday school was for like 9 o'clock, 9:30, whatever. But I can remember I remember when church was over, then we had Sunday school. So whatever time there was, that's what was happening. And I remember I accepted Christ as a child in Sunday school. My mom's best friend, Miss Melba, was my teacher. And I remember she had like a stutter. She had a really, really, really bad stutter. But she was able to teach. She also was a nurse. And I remember Miss Melba, because Miss Melba used to make all of her clothes and her hats. So they all used to match. Whatever she had on, it all matched. And I remember the day that she was teaching, and she talked about the crucifixion and the resurrection. And it made sense. I mean, it was almost like they do the light bulb goes. It made sense to me. It's like something came. I'm like, and I raised my hand. I remember telling her, I get it. I understand it. I understand it. She was so excited. And the next thing was they tell you, you're going to get baptized, okay? Because I didn't understand then. That it was because I accepted Jesus Christ. But that I understood and accepted his death, his burial, his resurrection, not understanding all of the depths, of it all, but in its simplest form. And I remember my baptism was like a coronation. I remember this big thing. Then after my baptism, everybody came to the house on Clear Street. There was this dinner like it was Christmas. There was turkey and ham, and Boo and my mom were like cooking for days. It was like this big thing.
Now, were you the first of the cousins to get baptized? Or?
I don't remember. Mine was such a big deal. I have no idea when anybody else. I don't. Kevin was my brother, and that's the one I cannot tell him anything about his baptism. And I'm assuming that they probably made a big deal out of everybody's. I guess. Yeah, I just remember my nanny gave me a diamond pendant. It was like, wow. It was like this, woo woo, Yeah, it was a big deal. I had special clothes to wear. Like after the baptism, I had a white dress, and I remember being in a white dress, white shoes, white patent leather shoes, and a special outfit when I got home because I had to get out of the white dress and. I had a new outfit. It was like really a big deal. So I don't know. I'll have to ask my cousins even about them remember their when they got baptized. I don't know if mine may have been such a big deal because I was the girl. I don't know.
All right, so take me through home life.
Okay.
There on Clear Street.
Okay. Well, so we didn't really, other than the summer. And then we still go back and forth on Law Street. But sometimes Boo would come stay when we were younger. We would stay when we stayed on Clear Street. That was the summertime. When we finished elementary school, which was we were all going to Jones School. We got to junior high where we all went to different junior highs. So you went to junior high in your district, in your school district, by your parents' house. And Kevin and I went to Cone Junior High. And I remember asking my mom, my best friend's name was Kelly. And Kelly lived right down the street from Jones School, elementary school. And she and I were very, very close. My parents would, let us hang out together, do things together. And I remember Kelly was Catholic. And Kelly was going to St. Mary's Academy. And I asked my mom, could I go to St. Mary's Academy? Because Kelly was going to St. Mary's Academy. She said, are you losing your mind? I am not paying for school. You can go to school for free. I was devastated. I didn't know what was going to happen with my life now. Kelly and I would be separated. I wasn't going to have any friends because I had friends in my block and a couple of other friends, but my friends were really in the 7-1. But the school by my grandparents, Rivers Frederick, it was so bad. It was really, really like a horrible school. The children were horrible. It was horrible. So we didn't go. They weren't sending us there, so we went to Cone. So did junior high. That's when we really started being home. At that time. That's when I met Kim. We had a whole friends that followed on through life. A lot of those relationships were done from junior high on. Home was like with latchkey kids. Kevin and I were definitely latchkey kids. I mean, because my parents still had the schedule, like they had, except now my mom would work more evenings. She would take more evening shifts now. And so, because we were older, so, we would come home from school and she would have dinner cooked. So during the day, what she would do is she'd do the cleaning up and, you know, making sure we had. So we never came home to no food during junior high years before we started driving, anything like that. So when we got home in the afternoon, if my mom was working the evening shift, dinner was on the stove. You just had to fix your food. And then she'd call. You're supposed to do your homework. Kevin didn't do his homework. Kevin would come home. Kevin would come home, put his books down, get his bike, and he'd either go ride somewhere or he was going to play with, you know, whatever his friends around the house. But my daddy still had the same schedule, so he would get home. But he didn't he might ask maybe, you know, yeah, did your homework? I'm not going to check if you did your homework. You know, so we were like a little more loose, you know, at that time. But the thing was, neighbors watched out, you know, for you. So they knew we were coming home, you know, to nobody at the house. So we had neighbors' phone numbers. You know, if anything happened, things like that, or you can just always go to the neighbor. So sometime later on, I'm trying to think. I guess it was more like junior high years or so when it started. But there's some issues with my daddy with drinking, and he would not come straight home. Even on Fridays, not come straight home. But at that time there were neighborhood bars. So there was Pokey's, that was a block behind us. There was Helen's, that was a block and a half up Cluish Street, about 2 blocks up Cluish Street. So we knew where to find him. Okay, so it's not like he was like out running around. We would just go, you know, if it was Friday and he was supposed to come home and take care of going, say we were going to eat hamburgers out or something like that. And then, which it wasn't often, that was like a treat. So my mom would like leave a letter saying, you know, fix your sandwich when your dad gets home. You know, he's going to go get you guys hamburgers or something. Well, we waiting for him to come home, you know. So we would go like, you know, I'll go down there and go get him, you know. And that's where he was at. And it was the neighborhood bars were like where like they gathered. It was just what it said. It was like the neighborhood bar. So, and we go sometimes he had, you know, he was drunk from drinking and, you know, so we still going to get us something to eat. And it's just by God's grace that nobody was killed while he was going to get a hamburger, you know. You know, at times when he, you know, they just, you know, we had to clean him up from falling asleep at the table and stuff like that. That wasn't like a every Friday thing. It just would be, and I don't know if he was going through something, I don't know what was what, but there are times that it was like that. Kevin kind of blocked it out. I remember the times pretty vividly. There were times we would have to go by my neighbors because we were hungry and he was supposed to go get something, and we just, you know, they would fix us something, you know, things like that. So there were times like that that happened. My mama would be mad, and she was a cusser. And it wasn't pretty. But it's like the neighbors like all understood. They like all knew each other's family life and, you know, whatever was going on. So it's like they would pinch hit for each other, you know. You just step in and you help out, you do whatever, you know. So yeah, so when we got to Cluish Street, it was a different life from Law Street once we got to Cluish Street full time. So we really kind of started, you know, started growing up, got a, you know, new batch of friends, and you know, we became night walk kids.
Well, tell me about school life. Tell me about elementary. Tell me about junior high. Tell me about high school. What kind of student were you?
Elementary school is where I found out how much I loved school. And I did. I loved school. I remember my kindergarten teacher, my first grade teacher, my second grade. I love school. So we were all there. Brian, at that time, Brian, Kevin, Eric, and myself were of school age. And we're there together. The rest of them were there. Wayne was there after us. Terry was there. They were all gone. We were gone. I think by the time they all got to elementary school. So we walked to school together. We came home together. We had an incident one day because Brian was really smart. And these guys waited like 2 blocks from the school. So maybe about a 4, trying to think, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe about a 6-block walk for us to get home to my grandparents' house. And these guys were waiting at this house had like this recess where you would walk up to the door, and they waited and they jumped Brian. And so we started fighting. I don't know where Kevin and Eric were. I don't know. I can't picture where they were. But I was fighting. I was fighting them, Brian. And Brian told me, "Go home, run home." And my mind was like, stay and fight. And I ran home and I told Boo. And Boo wasn't running. I brought her back, but by the time Brian was already walking home, and they beat him up pretty bad. And I don't remember what if they found him at school or what happened, after that. But I remember that, and I remember I was bad because he told me to run home because I wanted to stay and fight because in my mind I don't know, I thought I could beat up everybody. And so I felt we could have took him if I stayed. And I felt so bad because I felt bad that I went home. Then I was upset that he told me to go home, but I needed to go home. I needed to get an adult, get somebody. And then too, I guess he didn't know that he didn't want me beat up, So, but yeah, I remember that. And that was like the only negative thing I can remember from elementary school that happened was when that happened. But other than that, I loved. I was student council president at school, and I had a speech to do, and I carried that speech. I wrote the speech, and I carried it around in my hand because I had to memorize it. Because my 6th grade teacher, Gloria Humphrey Scott, she was about 6'3", and her voice projected with her height. And she told me, she said, "Little girl, get that speech memorized because you better not walk up to that podium with that dirty piece of paper." Because I've been carrying it around, right, memorizing it. And she said, "You better not walk up on that stage with that dirty piece of paper to that podium." And I memorized it. I was gonna memorize this speech. I got the speech memorized, but I forgot to leave the paper when I got up to go do my speech. So I went up to that podium, never opened the paper. It just had become so used to, and all I had to do was leave it on the seat when I got up, but I forgot. And I went up and I did my speech. And they were like, "Ah!" I went to step down off the podium, and Miss Scott clipped the back of my knee. She slapped the back of my knee. She said, "I told you not to bring that paper up there," and embarrass me, because to her, I was her student. that's her student that was running for student council president. It had campaigned. It was the the forerunner in the race and everything. I won, and I was student council president. But I never forgot to this day when that lady clipped me coming down those steps. But that's the way, that was the discipline. And this was a Delina C. Jones public school. But that was the discipline and the pride of Jones School. My grandmother went to Jones School. My mama and all of them went to Jones School. We were going to Jones. We were third generation. My grandmother was taught by Delina C. Jones. You know, so it was like, this was a big deal. That school had a history, you know, not just for our family, but for a lot of families in the community. And there was a sense of pride, you know, about the Jones School, you know. So, but yeah, so I had that with the student council, and I had something else I got awards for high grade point average. Yeah, I enjoyed and they would tell me they thought I would go and be a doctor. Yeah, and they actually would see my mom. A couple of my teachers saw my mom in my adult life, and they were like, "Is Jonell a doctor yet?" And, you know, is she? And it's like, no, she decided to be a homemaker, and she's got 3 children, and you know. So, what? With that brain? Yeah, so it was interesting. Middle school was just like everybody else's middle school. Yes.
Awkward. Right?
Huh?
It's awkward, right?
Yeah, and then for us it was like a whole bag. These kids that all going to elementary school together. And so we were, because we didn't go, most of our friends went to Lockett or whatever the other middle school was. We went to Cone because it depended on which elementary school you went to. That determined which middle school you went to. When we got ready to go, that was the closest to us, and so that's the one that they district us to. And but that's where I met Kim, Kim Joseph, who became my very best friend. And through Kim is how I met Eric. So, so yeah, but that was junior high years, and that was a lifelong relationship that was developed from junior high, and you know, about the friends that, you know, still in touch with from junior high. High school. I was a McDonald 35 Ron Eagle. My mama was a McDonald 35 Ron Eagle.
Cousins were Ron Eagles, yes, the family legacy of McDonald 35. Yes.
So a lot of 35 history on my dad's side and my mom's side. So yeah, that was, I loved my years at 35, but honestly, I was happy when it was over with. And it was done. Yeah, I did not work as hard. I was not, 35 was a college preparatory school. We had to write essays to get admission into the school. So you had to write a good essay. I was always a good writer. So I was able to do that. My GPA seriously dropped in middle school. Seriously dropped in middle school. But I went into 35 in honors English because that was just my strong point. I think I could do it blindfolded, I guess. But yeah, I did. I did You're Ron Eagle for like 35.
All right, so let's transition from there. Let's talk about meeting your husband, meeting my dad.
Okay. So, how did I meet your daddy? So, I was with Kim, and Kim had an aunt and an uncle and their children who lived there in West Beagle, in Louisiana. So, I'd already met her cousin Robin. She and her cousin Robin were a year apart in age. So, I met her at Kim's house. And so, I mean, her cousins, when Kim and them would have family gatherings, and we would be invited. And so it came time, and we were invited over there. It was Robin's birthday. She was having a birthday party. She was making 14 or whatever, I think, or whatever. But anyway, mom, they were giving her a birthday party. So my mom let me go and spend the weekend. So Kim and I went. We spent the weekend with Robin. That Friday after school, we went over. Kim's mom, which was Robin's aunt. Robin's mom and Kim's mom were sisters. So we went over to West Wego, and we were playing kickball, I think. We were playing kickball in the street, and the ball went over on the sidewalk, and your dad got the ball and gave us the ball back. He lived 4 houses or so from Robin. He knew their family. There was a community. Everybody knew everybody. So Kim and Robin had me set up to meet this guy over there because they both had boyfriends over there, and they wanted me to have a boyfriend over there with them. So I talked to him on the phone a couple of times. So I was supposed to actually meet him while we were over there for the party. So he was to come to the party. So when your dad was going on his way home from, I think he was in welding school or something at the time. But he got to his house. Well, this guy was there, and Kim's boyfriend was there, and Bobby. All of them were at the house waiting for your dad to get home. They just hung out down at the Rhodes house. Was a hangout house out there. And so they were all there. And it's like, so your dad is like, so they knew somebody different, So, who that woman for? Who's that woman for out there with the, that was by Robin and them? And, so Slim, who was the guy that Robin and them wanted to hook me up with, is like, oh, hey girl, so Pete and all the other guys was like, oh, you here for Slim? She's here for Slim. She's here for Slim. And he was like, what she look like? What she like? Because he hadn't seen me. And silly boys, So it's like, oh, I'm gonna take that woman from you. That's what your daddy said. I'm gonna take that woman from you, Slim. I'm gonna take that woman from you. He said, man, you ain't taking no woman from me. You ain't taking no woman from me. So anyway, we got to Robin's the night of the party, which was Saturday. Saturday night, the party came. I met Slim. Did not like him at all. Not somebody that I would have definitely passed on the street and never gave the time of day to. And I met your dad. I met your daddy. They introduced me to your daddy because he was a friend. They were all, friends with Robin and stuff. And we were walking out the door, and Slim pulled my arm, and said, well, where you going? I said, did you touch me? Because, granted, I grew up with all these boys. I just didn't, there's some things that I just didn't play, you don't do. And I said, did you just pull my arm? And I took my arm and I did him that in his stomach. I said, don't ever touch me. You don't have permission to touch me. And that was bad. I don't dare with him. And when your dad found out what happened, it's all the same night at the party. And so he came, he said, well, you okay? Robin told me what happened. And I'm like, yeah, I'm okay. And we just started talking. And then Sunday, the Sunday, which was the next day, Robin, we took a walk, and she met up. They met up with all the guys. They had this big tree in West Wego, and that's when we used to all hang out at the tree. Apparently, hung out at the tree, and so your dad was out there, and we kind of picked up conversation again and started talking, and from that point on, he asked for my number before we left, because we left that afternoon. Kim's mom came and picked us up, and we started talking from that point. He came over. Yes, we talked for about a month, like, off and on the phone. And or maybe about 2 or 3 weeks or something, whatever. But he came over. He asked to could take me out. So I asked him to talk to my mama, and so he had to come, pick me up. Well, he came to pick me up, and he had that particular night. My daddy's aunt was there, Aunt Ola. Aunt Ola was a teacher in like this very, I don't even know how to describe it, but she's like not one of the people that I would have wanted to be there for somebody to pick me up for a date. So we were all in the kitchen, and he came to the door, and he was there to pick me up, and they invited him into the kitchen, and and he was like, yes ma'am, very polite, yes ma'am, yes sir, no ma'am, no sir, and what time you gonna have a back, and all of that, and very polite. Very polite. And he had talked to my mom because his dad, was 5 years and some months older than me. Mm-hmm. And he had talked to my mom and told her how old he was before he because we had talked about it, and he said well, he said, I'm gonna talk to let me talk to your mom, and then if my mom would have said no, then that would have been that. Yeah. So because that's the way he was raised, Even if I tried to rebel and whatever, that's the way he was raised. And so, and I don't know what made her decide, that I don't know if it was because he came the way he came, or what. But yeah, so we started dating. That was February 1976. Yeah. February 1976. Our first date, our first date was a group date. So it was all of us, Robin and her boyfriend, Kim and Bobby, and me and Eric, and we went to see Sparkle. Wow. At was it the Singer or the Joy Theater, on Canal Street on Valentine's Day. And that was our first date. Yeah, 1976.
Okay, so take me through. You guys dated for a while, and then you went off to school.
Yeah, so we dated all through my high school years. So every picture, every prom picture, every formal picture, all of those pictures are with your dad. It's me and Eric on all those pictures. My family by that time had all falling in love with him. Right.
So take me through that before we get to the college. Take me through like him meeting your extended family, your cousins, your grandparents.
Okay. He met my extended family. Like I said, we had Sunday dinner all together at my grandparents' house. He came over. We were going to the movies on a Sunday afternoon. The rules in my family were, for me, I know, I can't say for everybody else. If I wanted to go somewhere that Sunday, if I was too sick to go to church, I was too sick to do anything else. Wow. So, go to church Sunday morning, go to dinner, and then you could go, if you was going somewhere with your friends. So, he came to pick me up at my grandparents' house, but it was him and Uncle Thomas, his oldest brother, because Eric didn't have a car. So Thomas brought him to come pick me up, and then I think Thomas was letting use his car. All he did was dropping us off, and then Eric we were gonna ride the bus, to get me back home, and then he was gonna get the bus back home. I don't remember, but it was a Sunday, so they had to come to my grandparents' house. We were there for dinner, and that's how he met everybody. Uncle Stan, my grandpa, my grandmother, everybody was there, and so he came in, he met Boo, met everybody. So my grandmother said, fix his, she looked at him, like both of them, and she was like, I said, my grandma said, do you want something to eat? And they were like, oh, no ma'am, no ma'am, no ma'am. And Boo said, y'all have to be shy. I'm going to fix y'all something to eat. And she fixed them something to eat. And Sunday's dinner was never simple. It was never a simple dinner.
Did she realize when she feed them, they will stay?
Well, Uncle Stanley came in. I don't know where he was, but Uncle Stanley came in. And he said, who are these two? I forgot what he called them. Who are these two hoodlums with their feet underneath my mama's table? So I introduced them, who they were. I was like, why y'all? And he looked at me like, why you eat my mom, my daddy food? He said, who are you people? And that's how they met my family.
Wow.
That's how they met my family, and they met my Uncle Stanley. And they met Boo, who fed him for the rest of his life. And so, but yeah, that's how he met my extended family.
Okay, so take me through the college years.
Well, we were together from 76. I graduated in spring 79. And I left for college that fall. I met someone in college that I went to high school with, but we weren't friends. And I met them at college. I was never a play the field person. So when I realized that I really liked this person, and I told your dad, the person, they came home, because they lived in New Orleans too, and they came home, and we had our community choir had a musical, and I invited them to the musical. And your daddy saw him, and that's when we knew they were booing and mad at me that I wouldn't invite him. I was in a doghouse with my mom, and because they all had fallen in love with Eric. And so yeah, and I guess to them it was like, see the other boy while you at school, but he still was, Eric was supposed to be, it. But I couldn't do it. So we broke up. I came home and broke up with Eric. And we broke up October or so after I left for school. And he was still going to my parents' house because they were still talking to him on the phone. He was still doing things for my family, going by my godmother and by my grandmother and them, and cleaning the stove for him because he was really good at cleaning stoves and ovens and freezers. And yeah, so he was like hanging out with my family while I was at school at LSU, which I didn't know that they were all like still hanging out with him. He was going places with my brother. Didn't know they were all still hanging out. So the other guy, so when I bring the other guy around, they were like not very hospitable. They weren't mean, but they weren't as nice as I've seen them be to other people. They were not too particular about him. He wasn't. There was nothing. It wasn't his fault. He was a nice person. They had just fallen in love with Eric. So from 79, was it 80? Christmas of 80, Bobby called, Kim's boyfriend. And, he asked what I was doing. I said, oh, your boy really just needs somebody to talk to. He was with Eric. And they were at a party at one of Kim's family members' houses. And So he called. I mean, I was just home. By this time, me and the other guy had broken up. So I wasn't with anybody. And at that time, also at school, I had recommitted my life to Christ. So, you know, I was changing. A lot of things was changing for me. And so I told Bob, I said, well, yeah, because one thing, Eric, was we were friends. We were friends, but we could talk. And we were friends. And so he asked us, he said, well, I was gonna bring him over. I said, well, yeah. I said, I'm not doing anything. This was like Christmas night. And so he came and we talked. I think I ended up bringing him home. And I talked to him a couple of times in between that. That wasn't 80, it was 81, I think. But I talked to him a couple other times, and he said, you're different. And I said, yeah, and, I talked to him about, because he would go to church with me, but it was different. And I would share Christ. I was sharing Christ with him. And so then he would get off the phone, So he had that particular Christmas, and he came over, and I talked with him then, and we sat around, we talked. I think we might play cards or something. So then I brought him home to his apartment and dropped him off, and then I came back home. I didn't hear back from him for a while. Next thing he had a baby, had little Eric. And I think my mom and them told me, as a matter of fact, that he had a baby. I'm like, still in touch with him. That you called, but mama never told him. But we got back together, still Bob and Kim. I had gotten in an accident at school at LSU, going to my cousin's house in Plaquemine, and an 18-wheeler and a bus hit the car that I was in eating the traffic coming down the incline, and the truck couldn't stop, and he hit us, and it ended up being like an 11-car accident. My cousins, whose house I was heading to, they found out because they saw it. So it wasn't on the cell phones and stuff. They saw it on the news. And my cousin realized that was the car, that his friend's car that I was coming in. Because his friend had to come pick up his sister who works in Baton Rouge. And so he picked me up and was bringing me to my cousin's house. And they realized that I was in that car. And well, after that, the damage was pretty bad to my back, and I tried to go back. I went back to school that spring, but I was messed up. So I had to withdraw from school, and I was in the hospital within a week or so after that. Well, Robin told Eric's, family. She went to tell him that I had been in an accident. And that I was, in the hospital and stuff. And he wasn't there, so they ended up telling one of his other family members who's gotten the message. The message he got is that I was paralyzed. And I was in the hospital. So he came to see me. But in my recovery time, Kim and Bobby came to help out through my recovery after a few weeks, so my mom and them could go. My mom and them just wanted to get out and go to church. It had been about 2 weeks or so. And so Kim and Bobby came and stayed with me that Sunday. They brought Eric. Him and Eric's mama kind of was on the fritz and whatever. And that's how we reconnected, started talking regularly. And From that point on, we just kind of got back together. Your dad, I'm trying to think, after surgery, the church that I was going to, because I was at a different church. I was going to the church that Brian and Janice went to, Bible Way, and we were having a fall revival. By that time, I had recovered from the surgery and stuff. Didn't go back to school, back to LSU. And I invited Daddy to come to the fall revival. And he came to the fall revival, and he accepted Christ at that revival. And his life completely changed. He completely changed from that point, and he accepted Christ, and he was just so hungry, to learn and understand. And so I invited him to the Tuesday night Bible study that I went to, and he would come from West Wego to Gentilly on the bus on a Tuesday to attend the Bible study. And he would get on the bus and come to attend church on Orleans Avenue where we went to church at, because that's where he was being fed. So he wasn't trying to. It wasn't like just a matter of just going to church. He wanted to know the word and understand the word, and those places were feeding him. And he did what he had to do to get there faithfully. So he 82, and I didn't have a proposal. Your daddy had no game. He had no rap. That wasn't. Yeah. He just said, "Well, I ain't taking a chance of you getting away a second time, so we're gonna get married."
That was it.
That was my proposal.
Wow.
That was my proposal. And we got married May 7th, 83.
All right. And we will get into that together with the two of you. All right.